Where is she? What are you doing here? The Dark Lord will be here momentarily, as will the Order. Black, where is Cecilia? Briefly, Sirius told Snape of the plan, including the small but vital change in the details. And you allowed her to? How long before the glamour wears off? She went to give her life before, Snape. Sirius stood his ground as Snape advanced. But this changes everything. This is forever. There are no guarantees that she will come back. You allowed her go? Repeated Snape incredulously. She was pregnant, you fool. Surely even you must have noticed her lack of focus. She was hearing things that she couldn't before. Bizarre things happened to a Mulberry, a wizard's child. Remus's child? Or cubs, replied Snape harshly. You knew? I told her she was not. I put her somewhere safe. And you bring her here? Have you no sense, Black? Snape's eyes narrowed and he looked at Sirius, glancing behind him at the veil momentarily and then down at the rope. I don't think she is pregnant. She may have been. But she survived the Dementors. He looked at Snape intrigued. They always take a soul. He turned and looked down into the ether, where he had seen Cecilia descend minutes ago. It could have been what protected her. Why, she is still alive. And she turned up on your doorstep, recapped Snape. You didn't think to tell us about it? But Sirius said nothing and continued to stare at the abyss that was beyond. I am to drop the memory, and she is to do it. From his pocket Sirius took the bottle that Cecilia had returned to him, appending it close to the veil. The stopper fell out almost before it was vertical, dropping onto the sandstone blocks that made up the floor, and both wizards watched it drift beyond the veil like a leaf in the wind. You let her go. Don't make the mistake of thinking that you are the only wizard here who cares for Cecilia. Sirius looked past Snape and at the person now approaching the archway at speed, staring at Snape, a look of determination on her face. Who's that? Asked Sirius as the witch approached, pale hair and face even though she seemed agitated. Tabitha Penwright. Mysteria. She works for the Ministry. Tabitha looked at Snape in shock, the words she had intended to say evaporating in her mouth. Tabitha shook her head. It was she who was about to tell him where the children went, and now he was standing in her room, by her artifact. With Sirius Black. He's a Death Eater! Exclaimed Tabitha, astonishment giving way to annoyance, and she turned to Snape. You told him about the veil? You set the Dementor on Cecilia Frobisher. Snape returned the look of accusation that Tabitha was giving him with one of his own. You did what? Tabitha and Sirius said the words in unison. She jerked her head and looked at Sirius, who in turn gave her a glare of pure anger. A feeling in the pit of her stomach began to grow and Tabitha looked away. It had been Regulus Black staring back at her. Tabitha had been sure of it. Waiting as he had done to humiliate her, to tell her in front of a large proportion of the school that she had been confiding in him all those months when she thought she had been sharing her innermost raw feelings with an understanding girl. Closer up though she could see. This was Sirius Black. The man was much older, his features slightly different. My boss told me all about you. Tabitha forced herself to face Sirius Black. My brother told me about you. And your abilities. His face broke into a leering grin and Tabitha felt her heart sink as the humiliation reverberated in her mind. And you set the Dementors on Cecilia? Yes. She snapped back. I did. And I'm sorry to have done. I did what I thought for the best. She stared at Sirius now, challenging him by her forthrightness. Haven't you ever done something controversial for something you believe in? I can understand you. Turning, she pulled out her wand and pointed it at Snape, but he's a Death Eater. Miss Penwright Silence. She demanded. You will have the chance to speak when the arrows come. Tabitha took a step forward and held her wand higher when Snape made to move. But not for long. Out of her hand her wand spun as Sirius knocked it out of her hand. Tabitha turned furiously and opened her mouth to scream that he would be taken by the Auras too. He was, Sirius continued, brandishing his own wand. Cecilia Frobisher made that go away too, did she? Said Tabitha sarcastically. I've sent word. I do have some power, you know. She's not dead, Miss Penright, intoned Snape. She's just been brave enough to do something some of us could not. Unspoken words passed between Sirius and Snape. Tabitha looked down. And saw. That's mine. She ducked underneath Sirius's arm and lunged for the corner of the arch, picking up the parchment that Cecilia had left there. Why? Who? I don't think it matters any more, Miss Penright, said Snape softly. Cecilia Frobisher is alive and she used what you have there to carry out a deed for, but Tabitha wasn't listening. She looked between the parchment and Snape. You? You took this? Snape said nothing. Tabitha's fury began to rise and she paced assertively towards the tall wizard. Are you a Death Eater? Her words were steady and rhythmic, spoken as only a woman can when she requires specific, direct information. Listen. Snape lowered his voice to her in a way Sirius never thought possible. It's true. I was once, but not anymore. To Tabitha's, and to some extent Sirius's, amazement he pushed up his sleeve and revealed a hideous scar that betrayed his secret. It is also true that Cecilia Frobisher made it disappear. Cut my link to the Dark Lord. Gave me a new start. I am a Death Eater no more. Tabitha raised her eyebrows and stared at Snape. Something she didn't believe to be possible had come to pass before her very eyes. He had been solemn and his masterfulness that she was used to had been replaced by humility. Never mind that. Sirius stepped between Tabitha and Snape. Listen, there's more than Cecilia Frobisher we have to think of. What about Harry? Snape's eyes turned on Tabitha and he folded his arms. I don't know. They could be anywhere. I thought you might have found them. I wasn't just thinking about Harry, replied Sirius. Voldemort will find him soon enough and the other part of the plan will be put in place. Lupin. Remus Lupin? Tabitha realized that the two wizards were staring at her again. The werewolf? He's at Azkaban, or at least he was. They executed the last of the half-breeds this evening. She pushed past the two wizards and approached the veil. Snape put a hand on Sirius's shoulder as he made to question Tabitha about what she had said and he pointed towards what she was doing. Well, the rope's safe enough. The Mysteria shook her head and added condescendingly, who does she think she is that she can go beyond the veil? It works using the memories you know. They link together by common events. That's why you need a seed memory to find what you are looking for. Snape took a step forward and stood next to her, craning his neck forward as he followed the line of the rope. You think you have the monopoly on the veil? Shouted Sirius hotly, making Tabitha turn round. And what has it to do with you? Asked Tabitha. Let's just hope you got it right. She looked between Sirius and Snape. She has to go carefully, from one to another. One lost footing and it's all over. She glanced at the material before continuing. The thoughts are real there, like areas of time interlinked to one another. It depends on the memory. That's why it works. People didn't think it was possible. So she's on our side, Snape. Interrupted Sirius. I'm on my own side. I don't approve of rebellious schemes taking place in my room of artifacts involving my veil. For all you know, you could have destroyed the world with what you had here. Tabitha waved the parchment that had once belonged to her, been stolen and then reclaimed, as if to underline her assertion. And why do you know so much about all of this? Shot back Sirius. Because I'm the only other person who's ever done it and come back. Just then a loud crash followed by the tinkling of what sounded like glass shot down the corridor that led back to Tabitha's office. Oh no. It's started, replied Snape, withdrawing his wand. We cannot go back. All three wizards stood with their backs to the archway now, their wands drawn defensively. Their anticipation was not in vain. Out of the corridor stepped someone Tabitha recognized. Vincento. And he had his wand to the throat of a boy. "I'm sorry, Professor Penright," said Neville Longbottom. "You were right and Draco was wrong." Tabitha took a few steps towards her friend and Vincento lowered the wand. "I got your message, Tabitha, and on my way here I found this boy where he shouldn't have been. Let him go." The voice behind Vincento was one of a girl, and Hermione Granger stepped out behind them. "Miss Penright, he thinks Neville stole something of yours from the office." "And did you?" Tabitha took a few steps towards Vincento, her friend, colleague and ally. "Did you take something from the office?" Jerkily Neville Longbottom nodded his head as Vincento produced a large, green-bound hardback book. "It's up to you, Dabs," said Vincento. "I can take the two wizards with me, and you can deal with the children." Tabitha looked between Neville and her copy of Mysterious Mythology. She lowered her wand and began to walk towards them. "Neville," she began, holding out her left hand. "Why did you take my book?" "It's not yours," replied Neville, shaking a little as Vincento drew his wand closer to his throat. "It's Harry's." "Harry?" This time Tabitha looked past Hermione and at the boy standing behind her. Harry Potter stared back at her. "Is this yours?" She took the volume from Vincento's thin hand and threw it in Harry's direction. The boy caught it and looked at the book. "No." Harry shook his head. "This isn't mine, or at least, it's not a copy that could help anyone understand the universal link." At the words Vincento visibly flinched and stared at Tabitha. "They were misleading you, Tabs." He continued to stare at Sirius and Snape, who were still standing behind Tabitha with their wands aloft. "After everything you've done, and they still kept this from you. Let him go, Van. It's over. In a few minutes a whole load of rebellious wizards will be here to fight Death Eaters and he who must not be named." Tabitha walked over to Vincento and lowered his arm. "To be honest, I'm sick of the lot of it. Cecilia Frobisher can go hang over the veil, see if I care." The following things happened at once. The children, all five of them, poured out of the shadows and towards Sirius and Snape, wondering what Tabitha meant by her last statement. Behind them the Weasley twins bowled through, shouting aloud that Cecilia Frobisher was not in fact dead. To the right, down the corridor of the brains, further hurrying was taking place, this time sounding like several scores of feet running in one direction, shouts and screams, protests and declarations echoing into the domed cavern. Harry rushed forward too, not to Sirius but to Snape, demanding the potion that he knew he needed to take. Hermione, the quickest of the five, sought confirmation of the fact from Sirius, who, on telling her that Cecilia Frobisher was indeed dangling from a rope through the veil, yelled towards it and nearly lost her footing. Both Sirius and Snape put their arms out to prevent her from falling, and she stepped back, glaring at both of them. "I can't believe you left it so late to give Harry the potion," she screamed at a speechless Snape. "I left you with enough information. And you." This time she stabbed a finger at Sirius. "You knew she was alive and you let her go through there." This time Hermione jabbed in the direction of the archway. "You. Ooh." Hermione broke off and stepped back, looking at the two wizards who were surveying the audience that had surreptitiously appeared around them. Hermione Granger realized now that she was screaming in front of the whole of the Ministry and their assembled Aurors, the Order of the Phoenix and Death Eaters. Behind all of this, at the back of the group, Tabitha Penright took a sharp, unnoticed intake of breath as Vincento held on to her firmly and held his wand to her throat.